What happens when you approach podcasting like a business asset instead of just a podcast? Well, that's exactly what my guest today, Angel B. Hartwell, did. Angel is a 21-time award-winning podcaster who did something that most podcasters don't. She actually sold her show to someone, they took it over, and then she created two more shows. Her approach to podcasting and business is very strategy oriented, and she has some really cool ideas for podcasters who do want to monetize their show in different ways. Now, I want to be transparent. The way that she monetizes her shows and the way I recommend people to monetize their shows are different. She wants to make money from her podcast guests, of converting them to clients, and that's worked for her. My approach is more community building, putting out content, not selling to your guests, but letting opportunities unfold as they come, such as finding clients through listeners, repurposing your content, and using it as a marketing strategy for social media. And I think the beautiful thing about this is we both can give you strategy advice, and there's not one way to podcast, right? That's the nice thing of podcasting. And that's why I wanted to bring in different perspectives onto the show. So as you listen to this episode, I want you to take what resonates. She shares a lot of amazing advice, such as what makes a show sellable, what's the actual process look like, and how do you find those opportunities? How do you find really good guests for your show? How do you treat your podcast like a business asset, not just a podcast as a hobby? And how she applies for awards, which I think is a really interesting approach that a lot of podcasts can benefit from, saying, I'm an award-winning podcaster. So even if you're not trying to sell your podcast, you probably want more conversion in your show. And so Angel has some good advice on this. Okay, let's dive right in. Welcome to the Podcast Café, where we're serving up everything you need to know about podcasting, from tips, stories, and strategies for podcasters from podcasters. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency helping business owners, creatives, and thought leaders launch and grow their shows. Whether you're just starting out or want to take your podcast to the next level, this is the place for you. Each week, we'll dive into practical tips, actionable strategies, and of course, stories from other podcasters so that you can build up a podcast that you love and that works for your business. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe. Hey, Angel, welcome into the Podcast Cafe. I am so excited to be talking with you today.
I'm excited to be here, Haley. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So before we get into all the cool things that you do, we're going to be talking about selling your show, how you got started, your background in podcasting. But first, I have to know, what is your go-to coffee order?
I don't drink coffee. I'm a tea girl.
Hey, what's your go-to tea order?
Yeah, so I love Celestial Seasonings Bengal Spice. It's like a chai, but it's herbal. So it's got no caffeine. It has the same flavor as a chai, but it's herbal. So
okay.
Yeah.
Delish. I've never met, I know that there's a lot of people that don't drink coffee, but it just happens that they all come into the Podcast Cafe. Isn't that so funny?
Well, a cafe can be a tea cafe. It doesn't have to be a coffee cafe.
Coffee cafe. I know. It's so funny. I went to a networking event yesterday and people just know me as like the espresso girl because that's my business, Espresso Podcast Production. And I'm like, I like that. I like that reputation. So now that we have that out of the way, I want to hear about your background in podcasting. So you sold your podcast and then started more. And I think that's going to be a new concept to a lot of people. We think about selling businesses. We think about like selling books, right? We don't necessarily think about starting a podcast to sell it. So take us back. Take us back to the start.
Let me just say that if we go back to the start, it's a long time ago. So I want to land us in the part of the journey, just about pre-podcast and then go from there if that works. So pre-starting my first podcast, I had been in the personal and professional development space for about 10 years. And I had a personal life rupture that happened in 2016. And as a result of that personal life rupture, a lot of things collapsed, including my business. And so I was in this place in 2017 where my business, which had been, a multi-six-figure business up until that point, serving people internationally for a decade, in February of 2017, my business did $7 in the month of February.
Wow.
And so it was very clear to me that not only did my parts of my personal life collapse, but my business also had collapsed. And so I put my business in the fire, and I spent about 10 days sort of just sitting like, okay, what am I doing now? And two things kind of came out. One is I'm very skilled at high ticket sales, and high ticket is 5 figures and more, 10,000, 50,000, 150,000, and up. So I'm very skilled at high ticket sales. And I also had built a pretty good network. And so I did two things. One, I started to reach out to my network, and primarily looking to see if I could fill a role on somebody else's team doing high ticket sales. And in the process of reaching out to my network, I happened to reconnect with somebody I hadn't connected to in like 10 years. And she had just been selected to be Apple TV producer for a show called Fix My Brand. Apple TV approached her and said, would you like to do this show? And she was like, yes. And so she said to me, would you like to be on Fix My Brand? And I was like, yes, I killed my brand. I've already killed my brand. It's dead. So yes. And as part of that, I had primarily been helping women. As part of that whole Fix My Brand process, it became clear that I was now being called to work with men. And so as I was in the process of redesigning the website and the offers and all of those things, she was suggesting that I do a TV show, and I was like, no, these are executive men. They're not watching YouTube. These are executive men. They're listening. They're listeners. And that was when the idea for the first podcast kind of rose up. And that show was called Men on Purpose. And what was pretty cool about Men on Purpose was I was a woman interviewing men, right? And I mean, I didn't do that purposefully or intentionally. It just ended up being that way. But it was so much easier to just approach men and say, hey, I'd like to interview you. And there was like the surprise and the shock of a woman doing a show called Men on Purpose. So I started Men on Purpose in January of 2018. And within 6 weeks, it was ranked in the top 200. And within 4 months, I had my first 5-figure payday from the podcast. And basically, somebody found me on Twitter, applied to be a guest, became a guest. I did the interview. And then at the end of the interview, it was pretty clear to me that I could support this person. And so I said, would you like to have a conversation? And he turned into a $50,000 client. Yay. Let me ring my bell for that. I'll ring my bell for that. Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
Right. And so that's how Men on Purpose started. So I'm just going to stop there and see if you want to, ask me a follow-on question to that, or if you want me to just keep rolling.
Yeah, I think the audience is going to want to know how you made it into the top 200. Was it marketing that you were doing? Was it reaching back out to the community and saying, I created this podcast? Like, what steps did you take to get into the top 200?
Right. Well, back then, it was 2018. There was only 500,000 podcasts.
That's true.
There was only 500,000 podcasts. And if you know anything about the podcasting space, that you know that 90% of the people who start podcasts have pod fade within 8 to 12 episodes. They go into pod fade. Many people do not start podcasts from a strategic perspective. I was very, very strategic. I was very intentional, and I actually didn't even care about rankings. I didn't even know about rankings at the time. I literally didn't know about rankings, and then somebody in my circle happened to say that they had this thing called Chartable, and I was like, oh, that would be interesting. I'll go see what happened. And there it was. I know I miss Chartable so much. I love Chartable, but we don't have it anymore.
No, we don't.
Anyway, so I looked, I just was like, well, I'll go check out my podcast. And there it was. It was ranked. And ultimately that show ended up being ranked in the top 50 in marketing when I ended up selling it.
Okay.
So what I did, I have interview-based shows, and I have the expectation that my guests are going to promote.
Yeah.
And that my guests are going to, be as enthusiastic about their episode as I am. And so I also had, I had my own list of people that I was promoting to and my own socials that had been built up over the 10 years prior. So it's not like I just one day decided to start a podcast and I had zero, right? I had spent 10 years in the business. I started my first podcast. So I already understood how to monetize. I already understood how to, cross promote and do all of those things. And for me, the ranking was like, oh, isn't that fun? You know what I mean? Like I wasn't even going for it. You know what I mean? Because it was not something that was really part of the intention of starting the podcast in the first place. The intention of starting the podcast in the first place was to have it be a vehicle through which men could become my clients. And that was the intention.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Yeah. I love that. I mean, that's what I always tell people to do as well. Like the vanity numbers don't really matter as much as the conversion or the conversations or actually getting clients. So yeah, that ranking is just kind of like a cherry on top, but I'll let you proceed and tell us when you got to the point of selling.
Okay. So I did Men on Purpose all through 2018. And then in 2019, I got inspired because I was, working with men, but I still had women knocking on my back door because I had spent most of the previous 10 years serving women. So I was now face front. I had, I was promoting that I was working with men, primarily executive men. But the back door, the women kept knocking. So I said, well, maybe I'll do another show. I started Wickedly Smart Women, and it launched in September of 2019, and within one day, it was ranked in the top 75 internationally. Wow. I was like, oh, that's an interesting sign. And so I was running both shows for 3 months. And Wickedly Smart Women, I had my first $10,000 client before the show even launched.
Amazing.
Yeah, from that brand. And so about 3 months go by and I'm feeling squished. And I'm like, I think I'm feeling like I'm complete with Men on Purpose. I had a bank of about 12 weeks, 15 weeks of episodes because I always make a bank because I take the summer off from recording.
Okay.
So I always have a bank. And so I had this bank. And at the end of December of 2019, I was like, I feel like I'm complete with this. Like it just felt complete. And I also felt like I had too much on my plate because I was doing the 2 shows. At that time, it just felt like too much on my plate. So we roll into March of 2020. March of 2020, I'm at the New Media Summit. I am an icon of influence at the New Media Summit. And after we all found out about COVID shutting off the entire country and everybody was freaking out a little bit, we were in this little bubble of this event, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of this event. Thursday was the day that the event was basically over and the host had all of us who were podcasters. We were icons of influence. People would come to these events and pitch to be on our shows. And so there was a bunch of podcast hosts that he would mastermind with for the last day. And during the mastermind, one of the people at the table was a host who was a paid host. He didn't own his own show. It was a real estate show. Somebody else owned the show. He was a paid host, and he had been brought to the event because it was a fairly popular show. And we're all sitting around the table, and he says, I just want to have my own show. I just want to have my own creative, license, and I want to have my own show, and I want to help men, and I want to help them to be on purpose. And I'm like, okay. And I had already made the decision that I was going to put the show on hiatus. And so as I'm sitting there in this room, this idea comes in, and I was like, I wonder if he'd be interested in buying the show.
Yeah.
So I approached him and I said, would you be interested in buying this show? And he was like, oh my God, this is the answer to my prayers. So I ended up selling my first show, which I also came to understand in that process was not just a show, it's a brand.
Yes.
And you can sell brands. And I actually spent the first 20 years of my career in real estate. So it's IP, it's intellectual property, it's in virtual real estate, right? So I sold him my show, and I have the whole process in the back end. I have it all mapped out. I have the whole SOPs of how to actually go through the process of selling a show and transferring all of the IP and all of that. So yeah, I made sure that I captured that process in addition to actually facilitating and going through that process. And so that's how I sold my first show. And then in 2023, I ended up launching my third show, Leading Visionaries. So I understand that these are all brands. And Wickedly Smart Women now is a #1 internationally ranked 14-time award-winning show, downloading in 141 countries, multi-six-figure generating brand, and then some. We have done a book out of the brand. I extended the brand for Wickedly Smart Women with a book called Wickedly Smart Women, Trusting Intuition, Taking Action, and Transforming Worlds. And this was a $250,000 book.
Wow.
In revenues.
Incredible.
Right?
Yeah. It's amazing.
So, if somebody wanted to buy Wickedly Smart Women for the right price and the right person, I would entertain that. I would entertain that. And Leading Visionaries, same thing. It's now #1 internationally ranked, 7-time award-winning, downloading in 63 countries. It's not as mature as Wickedly Smart Women, and so I'm not ready for entertaining a conversation to sell that one yet.
Mm-hmm.
However, yeah, you can start and grow and sell a show.
Okay, I love it. I have quite a few questions for you.
Yeah.
First one is about Men on Purpose.
Yeah.
Do they still do that podcast?
He ended up the podcast and running with it for the first probably year or so, and then he changed the name a couple of times, which I thought was interesting. But it once somebody has bought the intellectual property, it's theirs, and they can do anything they want with it.
Yeah.
So he changed the name, and I'm not sure if he's still podcasting. I have lost touch with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you transferred ownership over to him, all of your episodes stayed, or did he start fresh?
They all stayed.
Okay.
So, that's part of the deal. That's one of the things that made the deal valuable. Not everybody wants to start from scratch. Mm-hmm. Part of what made the deal valuable was it was an already ranked show. Yeah. Right? It already had 163 episodes. It already had a following. It already had, a roster of guests that he was buying as well. You know what I mean? And all of those connections. So, yeah. So, yes, we had a 5-episode transition.
That was my next question. What did that actual transition look like? Did you host episodes together?
Yeah. So we had the transition was a 90-day, it was a little more than 90 days. It took about 100 days to get everything organized and moved over to his team, right? All the back end stuff, including the YouTube channel and the Instagram and like all the stuff. There's a lot that goes into transferring a show or a brand. And we made the decision to pass the mic. I had the 5 pass the mic episodes where he came on because I had already had that bank, right? Yeah. So we made the deal, and my bank was running out of episodes. And so we co-created 5 episodes where we co-hosted the episodes, but every episode we were announcing that, he's coming in, he's taking over, and then he took over. And ran with it. Yeah.
That's really cool. I don't know many podcasts that do that. I know one show that transferred hosts, but they didn't transfer ownership. Mm-hmm. But what was like the audience response?
Well, the audience was an audience of men who were interested in being on purpose. And he kept that was part of the deal is like, this was the intention when it was created, and that's what he wanted. He wanted to serve men who wanted to be on purpose. So it was just such a perfect, it was a perfect match. It was a perfect fit, and the audience just kept rolling with it. I don't really know exactly, specifically, and precisely what happened afterwards, but I did have trouble getting the Chartable account over to him. And it looked like things were still going well
Okay.
for months afterwards
Okay.
because for whatever reason, the way we had set up Chartable initially, when I added the second podcast, it was 2 podcasts in one account. And I don't know, it was just such a low priority thing to separate
Yeah.
out the Chartable. You know, things continued to go well. Let's put it
Wow.
that way.
I'm having like such deja vu. I haven't thought about Chartable in so long, but I used to like religiously check it for myself, my clients, and I remember when they shut down, all of my
Yeah.
clients were like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, you know, the cool thing about Chartable that I haven't found a replacement for yet, in addition to, you know, giving you the charts for your show, at I think it was in 2021, all of a sudden I had Wickedly Smart Women episodes on
Mhm.
their own
Mm.
charting.
Oh, very cool.
Like individual episodes on their own were
Yeah.
charting. And so that was great because I then made a whole bunch of graphics and stuff and sent them to the guest and said, you just by yourself, your episode alone, you know, was top, you know,
Yeah.
127 in Portugal or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
So I was sad when I lost the episodes charted
Yes.
data.
Yeah. I use listen notes now, but it's not quite the same
Oh,
as
I'll tell you what I use, Pod Status.
Okay, yeah.
Pod Status. And that seems to be doing it for me. It's not giving me the episodes, but I did suggest to the guy, I said, hey, maybe you could do episodes.
Yeah. Right. You're like, "Please, please, please."
That would be
No.
fun.
Okay, very cool. I'll put both of those links in the show notes for people
Yeah.
to, like, go and I feel like a lot of people don't track their stats, so
Yeah.
it's a good place to start. You know, speaking about the guests that you have on, because you mentioned that you predominantly do guest episodes, it's an interview-based podcast, you expect them to promote it. I'm curious, with having so many episodes up and having so many guests a month, what is your approach to keeping in touch with them after? Because you are clearly making sales from them.
Yeah. Well, at least once a year when we have our anniversary, we get back in touch with the guests and we encourage, especially the guests who had episodes that ranked or guests that had episodes that had a high number of downloads. We always, at the annual celebration of the show, birthday,
Mhm.
we always get in touch with some of the premier guests that
Okay.
we have served. I have a mailing list of guests, and periodically I make offers. In fact, we are actually we have a wait list now for book 2 in this series because this was a compilation book. It was 17
see.
authors. So in the Wickedly Smart Women, Trusting Intuition, Taking Action, Transforming Worlds series of books, we have a wait list open. And most of the people who are coming to my shows are speakers or authors or thought leaders who want more exposure. So anytime I can provide them with opportunities for more exposure, and, you know, I'm also a super connector. So sometimes I'll be talking to one person, like I might be talking to Haley, and all of a sudden it will pop into my head, oh, I should connect Haley with, you know, XYZ person.
Mhm.
And so I'm naturally going to just do that anyway.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's my kind of maintaining connection with the guests. And we also have a green room on Facebook, but not every guest, you know, does their part and joins the green room.
Sure.
We do have the green room. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I maintain.
Okay. I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked to someone on the podcast who had like 300 episodes, was doing like 4 episodes a week, but wasn't really staying in touch with the episode
Mm.
or the guests afterwards. And I love that you do because I think it's just such a missed opportunity to have these like hour-long conversations with people and then never talk to them again.
Yeah.
I think it's important to like I like that approach of reaching out to them once a year.
Yeah.
That's like very doable. Get them all on an email list. Like you could definitely set that up to be easy to for yourself to do.
Yep, it is. It's not hard at all. And you know, what the other thing that we do is we put every single episode into rotation. So the day that this content is evergreen, I do not, generally speaking, most of my guests and the way I interview and the way I help them to promote themselves, It's evergreen. This is not one and done content. We just spent, whatever amount of time we did together. You can pick this up and put it back out again and again and again. And we do that. So we have all of our episodes. As soon as we launch the episode, we do the promotion for the episode the day that we launch, and then we put it into a rotation so that these episodes keep popping up in our social media streams again and again and again and again, kind of like a jukebox.
Yeah.
And so, we tell our guests as well that we're going to continue to promote their episode. And we encourage them to do the same. I at the end of every interview, I say, please remember, this is evergreen content. So if you're having a bad content day, you can always pick this episode up and put it back out again. And so, not everybody does that. But then when I remind people, they're like, oh my God, yes, that was a great interview. And then they put it out again. Sometimes you have to remind people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. With the rotation, how do you do that? Do you have like a...
Yeah, it's like a recurring social media post thing. We had a thing called Social Jukebox. I'm not sure if we're still using it. Then we did another thing called Social BU. I'm not sure if we're still using that because my operations manager is optimizing, and I think we're starting with a new one. It's called Recur Post, but those little details are like... I just say yes and pay the credit card bill and say yes, thank you for taking care of all of that. Okay. While I focus on the $50 or $100 or $150,000 deals. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like that's why podcasters who want to scale, who want to have big shows, like if you're doing all of your own editing, if you're doing all of your own production, it's hard to do that. Like the top podcasters are not.
Well, it's not the highest and best use of your time. Exactly. It really isn't. It really isn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I always tell people when they're like, do I outsource? Do I keep it? It's like outsource. I don't know, to me, because I'm an editor, but like, I don't know.
Well, and I think a lot of people, and this is why there's pod fade, right? Because so many people start podcasts because it's a creative outlet for them, or they start a podcast because it's, they have a calling to share their message, right? And they aren't thinking strategically. And I can't tell you how many people I have talked to who've said, oh, I'm not thinking about the money. Well, I'll tell you what, if you have a business and you're not thinking about the money, pretty soon one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to get clear that you need to start thinking about the money and figure out how to make that magic happen, or you just go into pod fade and you're done.
Sure.
Right? And that's why there's 4 million podcasts out there, but only 53,000 are considered active.
Yeah. I shared that stat on my Instagram a while ago, and my audience was like, this can't be right. And I was like, it is, right? Like, most podcasts don't make it past 3 episodes.
That's
10
right.
episodes.
That's
so,
right. That's right.
I want to ask you about the awards that you win. I think that is such like a cool way to promote the podcast, being like, it's a 14-time award-winning podcast. How did you get these opportunities to win awards, and how can the audience do that too?
Well, the very first award I won was in the 2020 Podcast Awards, and it was for Business for Wickedly Smart Women. And the Podcast Awards, this particular one, that award thing was started like 20 years ago. In fact, the guy who started it was also the CEO of Blueberry, which is one of the big hosting platforms, and he just passed away in September during this year's Podcast Awards window. And so it got canceled because he passed away in September. May he rest in peace. And so, when I first got into the podcasting space, there was a cohort of people that I figured out the podcasting with, and we all kind of helped one another, and somebody somewhere, I don't know, somehow I found out about the award. And how do you get awards? You apply for them. You recognize that your work is worth it. You recognize that your content is valuable. You recognize that, you don't get to win if you don't put yourself out there. Yeah. Right? So I applied for that award and won it. And I was like, great. And then after I won the first award, I said, oh, well, this is absolutely a credibility builder. And I started to find out about some other awards. But, there's all kinds of awards out there. And now there's even more awards. There was people are starting their own awards things. Like there's a Women in Podcasting Awards. There's now a 50 over 50. Like once people started seeing that there were awards, some people decided to start their own awards thing. And so, there's a lot of awards that you can apply for. Yeah. So applying for an award means that you put your work in front of whatever organization is offering awards for podcasting.
Yeah.
Right. And so most of them also require a submission fee. So it's an investment, you do the submission fee. And then if you win, there's another fee for buying the trophy. They're not sending you the stuff for nothing. So that's the awards story. And I can now call myself a 21-time award-winning podcaster.
Incredible. Like that itself is a credibility builder. That's incredible.
Totally. And now I'm like, okay, do we need any more awards? Do we need any more awards? So now I'm actually going and looking for like unusual awards, like top 50 over 50 is kind of a fun award and I applied for Women in Podcasting and I didn't win that one. She Podcasts did a thing called Sonic Bloom Awards a few years ago and I was a nominee in that. Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of awards now that you can get and the way you get them is by applying for them.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. You are such a successful podcaster. Like you make money from your podcast. You are ranked. You win awards. You do all these really cool things. And one common thing, because I'm in the podcast space all day, is people talking about how slow sometimes the growth is. Mm-hmm. What advice can you give to them?
I am much more interested. So let me just say this. My podcast serves my business. My business serves my life, and my life serves my purpose. So I have my priorities straight there. And how my podcast serves my business is less about, how many people are liking and more about how many, guests am I converting into clients, right? So I would not be too worried about your growth if you have structured yourself strategically so that your podcast is serving your business. The people who are worried about growth are more interested in optics than they are in income. And so many people have their nose pressed up against the window thinking, oh, I should be able to do that. Well, unless you're incredibly, incredibly niched or incredibly topical, like the topic of the day, growing a huge audience is not an easy task, number one. Number two, the idea of getting sponsorship is ludicrous because most sponsors who are going to give you any amount of money are looking for at least 1,000 downloads a day. Mm-hmm. Or 5,000 downloads a month. I can't even remember the stats. It's like a crazy amount of downloads that they're looking for small dollars. Like you could, small. $250 for a month after you've got 10,000 downloads. Like that's not even worth it. You got to do the math.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not even worth your time, energy, and attention. And so unless you're strategic about it. And so in my case, everything I've done is organic. I do not pay for ads. I do not boost posts. I mean, I think I boosted once or twice on Mopod around my 6th anniversary or 300th episode or something like that, because I'm part of the New England Podcasters Group and Mopod sponsors our lunch for our monthly meetings. So I sent them $100. But I mean, I've done all of what I've done basically organically and not paid for ads. And I absolutely have zero desire to have 1 million bot downloads.
Yeah.
To just have a number that says I've got 1 million downloads. I'm not going to do that. That's out of integrity for me. I would much rather have real people listening, real people, working with me, real people, liking and commenting and doing whatever they're doing on the socials with our stuff. And my business has to be served. If my business stops being served by me podcasting, I will stop podcasting.
Yeah.
And something else will show itself to me that I will naturally probably be award-winning at, because I happen to be award-winning at everything I touch for whatever reason. So one of my blessed gifts. Thank you.
Okay. I love it. Very, very cool. Well, Anjel, I've loved this conversation. I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is, do you remember the first podcast that you listened to or that left an impact on your life?
Well, I have to admit I'm not a big listener.
Okay.
Because I'm spending time listening to my guests.
Sure.
Right? I'm not a big listener of podcasts. But if I had to say an impact producing episode, I think there was a podcast that I listened to a long time ago called Future Thinkers. And I can't remember any particular episode, but I remember enjoying that show. So let me just say that. How's that?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I like it. When you listen to podcasts, do you listen on Apple Podcast or Spotify?
Yeah, Apple.
Yeah.
It's in the car. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Apple's in our car. And that's, if I'm going to listen, I'm usually listening to my own episodes because I've got, I think I've got almost 1,000 at this point. So I'm listening to my own episodes to see if my editor did the right thing and all of that. Do we have the right URL in there? And I'm listening to my own episodes, and I'm generally in the car when I'm doing that. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, cool. So what advice do you want to leave podcasters with?
Well, again, I'm going to say that if you are starting a podcast, you want to be strategic about it because your time and your energy and your creativity has value. And, for those podcasters who are out there who are looking to have this be something that they monetize, then it makes sense for you to hire somebody to support you in developing the strategic plan for bringing money to the table, in whatever topic area that you are trying to bring your message out to the world in. And, you want to hire a consultant like me.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I also want to let people know that we do have a checklist. It's called Start and Grow a Sellable Show. And I think you're going to have that for them in the show notes, right?
Yes, I will.
Yeah.
I will.
Great.
My last question for you is, what is the most surprising thing that podcasting has taught you about yourself?
Well, what podcasting has taught me about myself is that I am an excellent listener and able to pull things out of people that they've never told anybody else. And so it's an area of excellence for me that podcasting has shown me. The other day, I had a guest on and he was like, "Oh my God, you are in your element." And he also happens to be a coach of mine in the nutrition realm. And so I had him on Leading Visionaries and he said, "You're really in your element." I said, the truth is I'm not in my element podcasting. I'm in my excellence podcasting. My genius is serving my clients. So, there's this theory of you want to be in your genius, not your excellence. Podcasting, I'm in my excellence. I'm not necessarily in my genius, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. How can people come and connect with you?
Well, they could listen to either of the shows, Wickedly Smart Women at wickedlysmartwomen.com or on any of the podcast listening apps, or Leading Visionaries podcast at leadingvisionariespodcast.com or any of the podcast listening apps. Or they can go to my website, www.creativeageleader.com.
All right, perfect. All of that will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to take your podcast to the next level. Remember, podcasting is a journey and you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Let's connect. Be sure you follow me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production or visit espressopodcastproduction.com for more tips, resources, and behind-the-scenes insights. I'd love to hear about your podcasting journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more podcasters just like you find the show. Until next time, grab your coffee, keep creating, and I'll see you back here in the Podcast Cafe.